Did he go live? We are live. We are live. This is the NFC South Divisional Debates. Welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast. I'm John McGlynn. You can find me on the Twitter machine at John McGlynn75. I'd like to thank my good friend and neighbor, Nick Script, at P2W Fantasy for letting me use the StreamYard to produce these hopefully heated debates. They're always fun. Today I plan to have some more fun in part 4 of this 8-part series where fan passion and fantasy goodness goes head to head. Today we have some really sharp and talented content creators in this fantasy football industry. We're going to talk about some news first of all. First thing I have to address is that I'm excited, beyond excited, to be chosen by Scott Fish to host the live in-person fishbowl drafts at the Chicago location. I'm already commissioned lots of home leagues, so me doing this for the Scott Fish Bowl and for charity is super awesome. So, and then speaking of home leagues, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to DynastyKit.com. If you're in a standard PPR, Superflex, or IDP league, they have a kit for you. They have Dynasty draft kits with 650 players, 150 rookies. Player labels go from medium to extra large. They even have reusable draft boards. Choose one of their 68 backgrounds or customize your own draft board with your league name, put your league winner, or better yet, the league loser on your board. Get 10% off by using the word commish, COMMISH, at draftkits.com when you order your board. So a couple other things. I finally went to Harry Carey's restaurant downtown with the wife and some friends. Good lamb chops, terrible half-baked, half-fake mashed potatoes. They were like powdery stuff with mashed potatoes mixed in, but nothing really special. Shrimp de Jean was average. I had a bottle of Jordan wine, which I'm not a big wine drinker. I just tried it, though. It went good with the meal, but I thought it was pretty cool. And then some recent news. We saw Albert Wilson sign with the Vikings. They could have went somewhere else. Justin Fields is ahead of pace in camp. Kyron Williams broke his foot, which I like him. A lot of people don't, but there's enough depth in the Rams chart right now to take care of that. So we are going to introduce our friends here, my awesome people that came on the show to talk to me. So Ashley, at this week's show features the NFC South and has Ashley, EMT_Ashley, representing the Buccaneers, who are trying to make every other team in this division walk the plank. Ashley, introduce yourself, tell what's going on, what's coming down the pipeline, all that kind of stuff.
Hello, all. My name is Ashley. I'm from Tampa, Florida. Big fan of the Bucks. Y'all can find me on Twitter at EMT_Ashley. Coming down the pipeline, I have hopefully some fun football news that I'll be joining soon, but I can't exactly announce it yet. I'll find out probably next week. So if you're a praying person or a good vibes person, I appreciate it. I'll also be on Twitch in the following month doing a fundraiser for St. Jude's Cancer Research Institute with their 60-minute gameplay fundraiser going on. You play 60 minutes, help raise some money for the kids, cancer research, all that good stuff. Same as my Twitter handle, EMT_Ashley, if you want to come hang out, watch, support, maybe even donate. Don't have to, but just putting the word out is good enough for me. And other than that, that's really it. More so just waiting for football to kick back up.
You're actually an EMT?
Yes, I have been for the last 7 years.
My wife did that for a while. It wasn't what she wanted to do. She went to school to get all certifications and get on the ambulance, and there was some rough times, and she just she decided to choose a different career. So it's I give you a lot of praise for doing that job. It's pretty tough, a lot tougher than a lot of people know probably.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Next up, Jeff Hasley at Jeff Hasley. Sir Purr and the boys will be prowling the division looking for their next prey. Tell me about yourself, where everybody can find you, what's going on, what's coming down the pipeline, all that kind of stuff.
Sure thing. Yeah, John, my name is Jeff Hasley, and I do a lot of different things. I work for footballguys.com as a writer. I've been there since 2007, long time. By trade, I am a graphic designer, and I also do video editing, and there's a couple different sites that I work with in that regard. Champions Round, as well as the Fantasy Doctors, and 4for4 as well. So I'm helping out those sites with their graphic needs as well as video editing needs. So I do that. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I love when I can combine my career with my hobby and my interest in that regard. So But you can find work that I do at footballguys.com. In the off season right now, I'm focusing more on rankings and kind of getting things up to par for the start of the season, where I have my weekly article that I do called the Fantasy Overview, which is kind of like a weekly look at the fantasy landscape of all different teams and kind of walk people through the season. Hey, it's after week 1 or after week 2. Who am I liking for waiver wire picks? Things like that. How's your team? How can you improve? How can you look ahead 3-4 weeks down the road and be like, yeah, you want to get this defense or this player or trade this guy, or, that kind of thing. So I do a lot of that in the article. So yeah, I'm rambling, but yeah, that's me basically in a long shot.
Football Guys they are harvesting talent.
Yeah,
all over
aren't
the
they?
place there. Jeff Bell and Dave Kluge and all the guys are kind of making their way over there. You guys
Yeah.
got something really good going over there, man. It's an awesome site with awesome people, and they have a scheduler tool for your fantasy football leagues. I like to have I run like a handful of home leagues, and because the schedule changed, the schedule hasn't been updated yet for this new situation to do what I want to do. I like to put my week 1, 2, and 3 division because every league I'm in, I have divisions with 4 divisions with 3 teams. So I have to remake the whole schedule for every league all the way across the board. So we do a play all week 1 against division opponents to get a win, loss, or tie for that game depending on the scoring, and then week 2 to week 14 is the regular season, and then week 2, 3, and 4 is versus your division opponents, and then we're 11 or 12, 13, and 14 is against your division opponents also, and it puts a lot of weight in playing your division opponents, and it's a 3 division game too. It breaks a lot of ties that way. So but they have what I use for the week 2 to 14 is the Football Guys schedule tool. It's super awesome. It's a great tool. It's just one of many, many things that are awesome on that site. So
there you go. Yeah, and if you haven't ever checked out Football Guys, now's a good time to do it. Check it out. And we're doing so much more this year on the digital side, right? Like videos and like shorts and things like that, because a lot of people get their information on their phone, right? And on their phone, they like to get quick videos and just shots of information. And Football Guys has really kind of risen above where they were in the past with that this year. So if you like that kind of thing, great. We have tons of content. Lots to explore. Check it out.
Everybody loves content. Everybody loves exploring. Everybody loves finding out new things. So you guys are great for it. Ladarius Brown. This isn't the Georgia Bulldogs you're representing here, but it's the Falcons. And hopefully you brought your rig in today because you're going to need it to fly out of this division debates as the champ. Yeah. Tell me about the Falcons and what's going to happen here.
Oh, boy, that's a loaded question. But like a baked potato, a lot of chives and everything are in there. But anywho, well, I'm Ladarius Brown. As you can see the name right there. I write for Fanside, and I write for the blogging Dirty Luck about all things Falcons. I also write for Sportskeeda. I'm the NFC analyst, so I talk about that as well. And at my podcast, Sports in the World. And you can find me on social media at Ladarius_Brown on Twitter and on TikTok, and on Instagram, it's Ladarius_Brown. Because apparently there's another Ladarius_Brown on Instagram that I'm still looking for. But so I have coming on the pipeline more content. I'll be writing more for blogging as the season gets closer. And throughout the season, I preview some of the NFL games. And I just give some highlights, some key insight there. And that'll continue on, for this season. And I also drop in little things throughout the week as well, little video on thoughts on teams and things of that nature. So the closer we get to the season, optimistic me for the Falcons fan, just will be more content, more things of that nature, question-wise and hopefully answers-wise when the season starts.
Fantastic. We are missing our last guest here, so we are going to go in without him. We'll take over to Saints. We're going to pray for the Saints here in this division debates against 3 people that hate Saints probably. So we'll make it work. But
never heard of it.
Let's start out with the what we're going to do here is if people have seen the show before, we'll start with the quarterback position. We'll talk about the team starter. If it helps, we'll talk about any backups, the new drafted players. So we'll start with Ladarius here. We're going to start with the Falcons. You draft Desmond Ridder. You got Marcus Mariota, Felipe Franks, which is, I'm sure, a huge part of the organization. But tell me why. What's so good about this depth chart here for the Falcons?
One of the things that after Matt Ryan departed, got traded to the Colts, it left the depth chart kind of empty. But one of the things that when I look at a guy like Marcus Mariota, someone who does have experience, it's kind of like not at the end of the world type situation. Like he throws like 63% completion percentage throughout his career, like 77 touchdowns throughout. And I think what kind of helps the quarterback position, I think, is that he has the familiarity with Arthur Smith, which I think played a role and kind of convinced for him to come to Atlanta. So it kind of feels like, well, he's learning a new playbook, but in a way, he's kind of not. So I kind of feel that, Mariota he's going to be the starter this season, I think, to start the season. But to your point, with Desmond Ridder, I do feel that if the Falcons season kind of teeters, which, look, very much in the realm of possibility, you could see Desmond Ridder play this season, which I think they got great value for him in the third round, which he fell to the third round. Everybody had him maybe second round. Some people even had him like, in the first. But the things that I like about Desmond Ridder is that, he can take a play that looks negative and make it to a positive. When you see this film at Cincinnati, he takes a negative play, essentially a play like he's going to lose 5 yards, and somehow he turns into a plus play. He's a playmaker, in a sort of kind of way, he's very athletic, which I like as well. And something that's very interesting to me is that I think he still has to work on the release. I think the release, between college and pros, that's one thing he definitely has to work on and change. Now, because obviously I believe they look at him as the quarterback of the future, in my opinion, even though despite the third round grade. So to be honest, the quarterback room could have looked a lot worse, because look, there's no replacing a guy like Matt Ryan. There's just no guy in the world who could replace him. And for a lot of years, he was the best quarterback in this division. Pre some guy named Tom Brady, never heard of him, but he was the best quarterback in the NFC, the NFC South. So, like I say, not easy to replace him. But I think with Mariota and somewhere Ridder down the road, we kind of get that transition and kind of get that gap from Mariota to Ridder. But I'm very optimistic to see, essentially both guys play this season, to see essentially what we kind of have under center.
I think Mariota's kind of proved this already what he is. I mean, you get a handful of years to see what someone's made of. You have a pretty good gist of what Mariota's going to bring to the table. I think Ridder's a significant upgrade over Mariota. Mariota does love tight ends, though. If you look at some of his stats in the past, he nailed it. He threw to tight ends a lot. So he runs a lot too. Mariota's a good athlete. Mariota's a really good athlete. But I just think Ridder's going to come in and take this job sooner than later from Mariota, especially because this team is, they're starting to get younger. They're, you can see by some of their draft picks, what they're doing, what they traded for. So we'll get to that in the future. But I'm a big fan of Desmond Ridder coming here to take over this team. Not that I think he's, possibly the greatest thing that was in this draft, but I think he's kind of like he's bringing the torch a little bit to the next level from Mariota. But they're gonna have to move on in a couple of years, I feel. But let's go to the Carolina Panthers. So Jeff, tell me about my guy Sam Darnold, because I'm a big Sam Darnold fan, but I think he's not the future here either. But you can explain that to all the folks.
Yeah. So wow, Sam Darnold is entering his 5th year, believe it or not, 5th year in the league, and he hasn't exactly done that well, especially last year, probably arguably his worst year as a pro, and he started off fairly decently, going 3-0 to begin the year. Christian McCaffrey was healthy. J.C. Horn, their top pick at corner, was healthy. And the Panthers were 3-0. And Darnold had 6 total touchdowns, with some of which were rushing touchdowns. He was looking good. And then the wheels fell off. And then the offensive coordinator was let go. And just a lot of things kind of snowballed. And, we've heard before, Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. He is not quite sure exactly how to read defenses that well in a fast environment where, his offensive line wasn't necessarily doing him any favors, right? And so he struggled. in that regard. He was throwing interceptions, was turning the ball over, was not scoring on possessions. And it got to him. Eventually, he was injured and was replaced. But then he came back later in the year and didn't really do much of anything. But I think as a Panthers fan, we kind of want to get back to where we were in the past, meaning like the 2015 season when Cam Newton led the team to a 15-1 record, went on to the Super Bowl and lost to the Denver Broncos in Peyton Manning's swan song. Yeah. That's what the Panthers want, right? They and fans want. They want to get back to that. They don't have the personnel really anymore, right? There's no more Luke Kuechly. There's players who are gone from the team. Like Greg Olsen, he's gone, right? Cam Newton himself, most likely gone. The glory days is what we call them, and it was only just a couple years ago, really, if you think about it. But the way I see Sam Darnold, he does have a chance to make an impact, and it's very possible that he could come in under Ben McAdoo's offense and find something that kind of works for him. He's still young. He's only 24. I think he'll be 25 coming up.
Yeah.
Shoot, we saw, if you look back, the number 1 overall pick for the 49ers, Alex Smith. Remember Alex Smith. Remember how he was not good in the first couple of years, right? And then
the definition of a game manager.
Yeah, right. There you go. But he started to thrive once Jim Harbaugh came into the picture as the head coach of the 49ers. And then Colin Kaepernick was there, right? Kind of forcing him to compete. Could we potentially see something like that with Sam Darnold? I'm not ruling it out. Hey, I am looking for him to be better than awful. Hopefully that's something that he could be. The writing is on the wall, though, in terms of the amount of time that he has left in the league. He has a real short leash, I'm afraid. And the Panthers are doing whatever they can to find their quarterback of the future. And right now, Darnold is the guy who is, in that interviewer's chair. He's auditioning for that job. And right. I'm not sure if he'll win it or not. As I said before, there's nowhere really to go but up for this Carolina franchise. So, could Darnold be the answer? I mean, there was some good, interesting news that came out today saying that Matt Rule said Sam Darnold had arguably the best practice he's ever had with the team today.
Keep it coming. In
OTAs, right? He threw a touchdown on a double move to Terrace Marshall, of all people. Yeah. The people have already pretty much thrown dirt on him in the grave. So, I mean, there's an opportunity there. Christian McCaffrey coming back. Is Darnold a better quarterback with McCaffrey in there? Arguably, yes. The offensive line has improved. They have made strides in the offseason to improve that, as well as the draft, and Ike Ekwonu as the 6th pick overall. So there's opportunity. I haven't even mentioned Matt Corral yet, but I think this is Darnold's job right now, unless he just falters. And if Corral is ready, I think we're going to see Sam Darnold week 1, week 2, most likely week 3, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. And Panthers fans just gotta hope, and you gotta hope that things are going to be better than they were the previous year. So the NFC South is completely loaded with talent at the top with Tampa Bay, right? And then it's New Orleans and Atlanta and Carolina kind of fighting for an opportunity to do something. So that's kind of how I look at it. And like I said, there's nowhere to go but up for Darnold as well as the team in general.
I think they drafted Matt Corral out of necessity just to have a backup on the team. I mean, it's PJ Walker is right. We've seen him flash. He didn't have much, but Corral is. I think they were like, hey, we got to do something behind Darnold. We can't move on yet. There's not any elite talent in this draft, but we need somebody. Might as well pick Corral. I don't think Corral's that good myself, but I think he's Darnold level talent, and I think Darnold maybe. I think they're probably somewhere around even. I mean, for fantasy, obviously Corral brings a little more to the table than Darnold does, and he's a fresh start. We don't really know we haven't really unlocked all of his everything he could bring to the table yet. So They're going to. I think they're looking to see what Corral can do, but I still believe in Darnold. I'm a Darnold guy. I always have been, and just not even talking homerism. We saw what happened when you had healthy Christian McCaffrey, healthy DJ Moore, healthy everybody on the team. The team functioned very well the first couple of weeks, even if Darnold didn't have to throw the ball that many times. Corral was Darnold was a perfect situation, a game manager. He turned the ball over a couple times, made some stupid plays, but it wasn't that often. He kept them in games, and he was, like you said, he was on a hot streak. And like when McCaffrey went down, the wheels fell off, and he wasn't good
the
enough
bottom
to lead
fell out.
he couldn't leave the team by himself. He's not built that way. But if everybody stays healthy, which is a definite knock on wood thing, I think Darnold could be the quarterback they want going until they find the replacement. So that's it's something that only time will tell. But let's I'm not sure when Alvin's going to be here, so we'll move on to the Saints. And my favorite player in the entire NFL, Jameis Winston. I have him on every league. I traded for him everywhere. I overpaid for him because I love Jameis Winston. Even though I'm not I was when he was on the Buccaneers, when he's throwing to Chris Godwin, like my second favorite player in the NFL. It was a dream come true to watch that team operate. And I know Jameis throws tons of interceptions, but as a fantasy owner and not a fan of the Buccaneers, I loved having Jameis Winston on my team. I was getting like 28, 35 points a game. It was fantastic. But for real football, I believe that Jameis Winston is in a good situation. So I'm going to say that for him to get hurt last year might have been one of the better things that ever happened in his career, because he got to sit back and watch Sean Payton's offense run, watch the whole thing unfold, and get a lot of accuracy, put himself in a situation to really take over this team. If Alvin Kamara's back, where Alvin Kamara was before, this team can function in high cylinders with the draft picks, and we'll talk about some of the other players later that are on this roster. But I am a big fan of Jameis Winston. They only brought in Andy Darnold to back him up. Ian Book is just there on the roster just to probably be a camp cut. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but Andy Dalton is a really good backup. But Jameis Winston, I think, could take this team to be pretty competitive in this division, to be honest with you. And that might be my homerism or whatever, but I think Jameis could really bring this team to where it needs to be under a new offense. What do you guys think about Jameis Winston and the Saints offensive quarterback position anyway?
I think there's potential there, but they also don't have Sean Payton anymore.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting development of what that offense is going to look like, right? So there's some question marks there, and question marks around Michael Thomas, even Alvin Kamara too.
Right.
So there's definite possibilities there for him, and I'm not saying he's a bad fit or a bad fantasy play, but I think there's also some uncertainty.
Yeah, minus an Alvin Kamara suspension possibly for that stupid fight, or Michael Thomas decides they want to pay him a little bit more and he'll come back to camp. This team could be in a good situation. So let's move down to Ashley and this guy Tom Brady. Everybody's talking about. I traded him away at the beginning of last year for a first round pick, thinking that he was going to probably retire in the offseason. And or 2 years ago, I traded him for a first round pick, thinking that was it. And the guy who took over Brady is just sitting back laughing at me with the first round pick, and Brady's the number one, the top 5 quarterback in the NFL in a super flex league. And I'm like, son of a biscuit, this is terrible. What a terrible move. But tell me about the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. Here's a batting practice 85-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle for you to knock out of the park.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Tom Brady. I don't know if I really have to say more than that, other than it's Tom Brady. The same man that threw 5,300 yards last year, 43 touchdowns in the regular season, over 50 with the postseason, and it's Tom Brady.
And he didn't even know the offense, right? He didn't even know the offense until halfway through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Man in the Arena?
I saw parts of it. I didn't see the whole thing.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
I haven't
that's
watched
excellent.
it yet. I want to wait till it all comes out so I can watch it on one.
It was incredible. You're gonna love it. I mean, as a non-Tom Brady fan, it was awesome. So yeah, there's that. Sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
No, you were quite fine, no problem. But yeah, I mean, it's Tom Brady, and I think a lot of people, when he announced his retirement, myself included, was like, why now? Like, I understand that losing against the Rams was really rough because it's a team that kind of has been like a problem for Tampa, but a lot of people forget that the Bucks were not healthy either game last year against the Rams. They didn't have Sean Murphy Bunting. They had a practice squad corner filling in for him in week 4, and then against the Rams, Tristan Wirfs went out, and Chris Godwin's not there. AB's no longer on the team, and they didn't have that depth, so they don't have anybody to really throw to. And Tom Brady was getting them in that position to be successful against the Rams, like without all these key pieces. After you throw for 5,300 yards and 43 touchdowns, you're not losing a step. You have weapons galore on offense when they're healthy. So I think Tom Brady's going to knock it out of the park. Like, realistically, if that offense can stay healthy, if Leonard Fournette is the way he was last year, if Godwin comes back to be the same player, if Russell Gage can be half-foot competent in the offense, I think that Brady throws for another 5,000 plus yards and 40 plus touchdowns again.
That's what happens when I trade guys away. They go and they can throw 5,000 yards and 40-some touchdowns. That's my luck. But
so if I could just say something, I mean, you've got Tom Brady with the Buccaneers. You've got Marcus Mariota with the Falcons, Sam Darnold with the Panthers, and Jameis Winston with the Saints, right? I mean, Brady, the equivalent here is like Barry Bonds versus batting practice.
Right.
I mean, this is a runaway situation for Brady. But like you said, all those injuries and stuff and unfortunate occurrences for the Bucs against the Rams, against other competition last year, that just goes on to say a little bit about, in order to beat Tampa, you got to have some sort of things befall them, right? So if that happens, if injuries hit them the wrong way, they might not be the team that we think they'll be. We always talk about NFL being such a surprise. You never know. I mean, the Bengals, although I thought the Bengals were actually going to be a pretty decent team last year with Joe Burrow, and people kind of laughed at me a little bit. 9 wins? What do you? I predicted them to have 9 wins. And they came out of nowhere, right? So to speak, a little bit.
That was a product of a possible not being able to recover from a knee surgery situation, though. For Burrow.
True.
That's so.
And there was remember the Jamar Chase preseason fiasco stuff and all this stuff. Should they have gone with Penei Sewell, right, as their draft pick and all this? So there was interest in the Bengals, but we didn't really see all that coming. Who's to say that's not going to happen with one of these teams in the NFL? Right. It could be Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh's there except for quarterback, right? I would say, Denver was there except for quarterback. Now they have their quarterback. Maybe the Colts. All they need is Matt Ryan. I mean, who knows? Any team, I think, is. I mean, we see it all the time. We see it every year of a team that is just like, whoa, where'd they come from? Oh, they just beat the Cowboys, and then they beat the Bucks, on Monday night. Who is this team? So, anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Paper champions are every year. There's somebody that they already won the title before the season started. We don't have to play the games. Don't worry, they're going to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, as we saw last year, it didn't happen. It's always there is, like you said, you never know. That's why there's a saying that goes, that's why they play the games for a reason, because of this situation. So,
right.
Talk about batting practice fastballs. Why don't we talk to the running back position, and we'll start with the Panthers here, as long as we. Jeff, tell me about how hard it is to root for a team that's got Christian McCaffrey at the running back position.
So, Mr. Unbelievable in 2018 and 2019, has kind of thrown us two relatively down seasons in 2020 and 2021 for various different reasons, mostly due to soft tissue injuries, which Christian McCaffrey is one of the most well-conditioned athletes that there is. I mean, he just is nonstop. And for him,
it's in his bloodline. He's got a dad that played. I watched his dad play for the.
He definitely has the NFL pedigree, right? So, the watching him get hurt and get injured, and him not necessarily being able to play is it's real painful. But McCaffrey, he is arguably one of, if not the best type of fantasy weapons, because that's what he is. He's a weapon, a running back and receiver. You're almost getting double points as a result of him. At least you were in the past in previous offenses with Carolina. That could potentially change depending on how this offense goes. But I imagine that he's going to be a huge part of that, right? So if things go well, if McCaffrey can stay healthy, absolutely, he's one of the better running backs in the league, let alone the division. Nothing against Leonard Fournette or Alvin Kamara, but I mean, McCaffrey, just the way that he is able to, evade tackles, make plays, be a receiver, be a running back. It's really fun to watch, and it's a joy to watch him play. So yeah, I'm just hoping that he can stay healthy, because if he's healthy, I just don't see him being a disappointment.
A player like him, in my mind, is what I would describe him as is a perfect specimen, like a finely tuned, well-oiled machine, like a watch. Like a perfect situation, like a watch. But the problem is with something like that, if it's all it takes is one little thing to go wrong and the whole thing breaks down. He can't play with a hamstring. He can't play with a sore ankle. He can't play. He can't unless he's 100%. He's not Christian McCaffrey. But when Christian McCaffrey's 100%, you are getting 100% of one of the finest athletes in the NFL. So it's I hate seeing these players play from the time they were in fourth grade or kindergarten, like when most of our kids started, all the way to where they're at. They're reaching the NFL. They're achieving their dreams, and they finally get there. And stupid stuff like this, these hamstring issues and fine tissue, takes somebody out of the element. So it's a tough situation. But they got Chuba Hubbard back there, who he was pretty highly touted recruit coming out of college. So
plus Deontay Foreman too, who 4 years after having an Achilles tear injury, he's finally able to kind of come back and at least show something with his time in Tennessee, taking over for Derrick Henry, who had that Jones fracture last year. So Foreman turned that into a contract with Carolina, and he's a bigger back. Maybe he can take some of the load off of McCaffrey in the goal line. And also use him as a rusher and McCaffrey as a decoy. I mean, we've seen that before too. So much potential in terms of what the Panthers rushing game can do.
As fantasy players, we want to get the most points as possible, but as human beings, we understand that we don't want Christian McCaffrey to carry the ball 60 times a game or to have 50 touches a game or 80 touches a game. It would be fine for him to have the passing work and some end zone, some out of the backfield end zone flares, stuff like that, get a couple PPR touchdowns. But him at 3/4 of himself, I'm not talking about like physically wise, but him at 3/4 of himself as far as production wise is still a very good fantasy football day. So I'm happy that they're signing these players, Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman, to take some of the work away from him, especially the between the tackles and goal line stuff, because McCaffrey doesn't be doing that kind of stuff. He's not built like that. He needs a break. He needs to be Christian McCaffrey in the open field and do the things that Christian McCaffrey does. So I'm happy they're signing these players to kind of to help him out. So Ashley, tell me about the it was called Lombardi Lenny, but now he's called Lasagna Lenny or some other kind of Lenny like that. Like what's going on in camp?
Uncle Lenny.
It's I feel like, in my opinion, it's such a non-story.
It is.
Like, you see guys every single year come in like 10, 15 pounds overweight, and they're like, oh, he's Eddie Lacy. No. Like, you have guys like Najee Harris, who's 250, 245 pounds right now. He played at 242 last year and was wrecking people.
Right.
Leonard Fournette came in at 230 last year and had over 1,200 yards line from scrimmage. Like, it's just such a non-story. He'll be fine. I think that Leonard Fournette's going to have the reign over the Tampa backfield. They only really have Rashad White, who I'm really excited about in a secondary role, and Keyshawn Vaughn, who was there
third round pick
last year. I don't want to know about Keyshawn Vaughn. I think that he lacked a lot of confidence when he had the repetitions that he did. He couldn't hold on to the ball. He kind of was very indecisive in the backfield, kind of dancing around a whole bunch. But I feel like him and Rashad White are going to be fighting for that backup role to Lenny, kind of like, I feel like they're looking for their Ronald Jones, or who Ronald Jones was supposed to be. Right. Ronald Jones is supposed to be this home run hitter who could catch out of the backfield and pass block. Ronald Jones could do one of those three things sometimes. He could sometimes run the ball. He could not pass protect, and he could not catch the ball to save his life.
Or hold on to it.
it was.
I can see Rashad White playing that role, but I'm not so sure about out of the gate. I mean, I know he's an older running back. He's like 23, will be 24 soon, I believe, as a rookie.
Mhm.
But in a Tom Brady offense, shoot, I think he just kind of has to take his lumps and learn first, right, before he gets thrown into a situation. I could be wrong there, but I see him more as like a second half of the year, if not 2023 type of guy.
Rashad White is a fantastic complimentary back for Leonard Fournette. That's going to be something. But I mean, like you said, right out of the gate, it's going to be the Lenny show. That's not even a question. Tom Brady loves Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette has come here and been exactly what Tom Brady was looking for, and then some. So
Yeah,
Rashad White's going to have to earn his role, and it's going to be a while. But I mean, he's a very good second fiddle to Leonard Fournette. So that'll pan out. But anything else, Ashley?
They also have Giovanni Bernard, who's, kind of that prototype third down back, not super big, pretty agile, can catch the ball smoothly out of the backfield and not, have much trouble. He's just a little light, and coming off a hip injury, I just don't know, with his age and a hip injury, just how much he'll be utilized. I feel like that's why they did draft Rashad White, kind of as like that insurance policy. Because Giovanni Bernard's not a bad running back. He's just, getting up there in age. And, coming off that kind of injury, it kind of gives you some worry. Like, okay, well, if Leonard Fournette has another hamstring injury, who are we going to put into the game? Keyshawn Vaughn's not proven, and Bernard is kind of, he's not that back you're going to give the ball to 30 times a game anymore. He's just not. So
Right.
I definitely think that'll be more so. If I had to break it down percentage-wise, I think we'll see maybe like a 70% Lenny, and then a 15 to 20% either Keyshawn or Rashad, and then maybe like an extra 10% of Giovanni Bernard, kind of like on third downs or like on a route or something like that. But I think the running game is going to be much more versatile than it was last year. Ronald Jones just couldn't do enough to add that element of surprise. Like when you saw Leonard Fournette in the field, it was either going to be a run or like a check down. But when you have someone that can go out and run a route or pass block and add that extra protection for Brady, you can kind of switch things up. So hopefully they're more dynamic and more versatile in that aspect.
Yeah, 70% is a pretty big load for anybody. So hopefully, he's going to shed all that weight real fast if he's getting 70% of the carries.
They didn't really run that much last year, too. I think they were the fewest carries of any team. I mean, when you pass for 5,000 something yards, your rushing yards is probably going to be pretty low. But that's no knock on the Bucs at all. It's just that Brady felt more comfortable passing for about 5, 6, 7 yards versus trying to rush for 4, 5, 6, 7 yards. So I mean, that sideline pass that he does so well, or the
swing pass,
a swing or slant, whatever. If you can get 6 yards on that, why run?
Right.
And Brady has perfected that because he understands defenses, understands, of course, the offense, which actually took him half a year. But the fact that he can do that, and he has the personnel to do it, and the fact that he also had Rob Gronkowski to almost be a decoy and at times be a great blocker, that helps.
Yeah. Hilarious. Tell me about talk about 70% workload. We got Cordell Patterson on your team, but they brought in Tyler Algier in the draft, Damian Williams, a couple other guys in this team. But what do you think is going to happen this year with the Falcons backfield?
It's a very good question. Without a doubt, I like Cordell Patterson a lot.
Everybody does.
He outplayed his contract. I think, I love it. One of the things about Cordell Patterson, listen, not only was he a great running back, he was great for this offense, period. He had, listen, obviously he led the team in rushing touchdowns, but, kind of like those ESPN 30 for 30, the what if I told you, he also led the team in receiving touchdowns too.
Right.
That's how good Cordell Patterson is. And, he was third in receiving yards and receptions as well. And to your point, Damian Williams, to me, I like the sign because to me, as much as I had so much optimism for Mike Davis last year, I really did. I truly did. I think he was going to be the guy to complement Cordell. But, I just don't think the running game wasn't there, albeit the offensive line wasn't that great either. So, however you want to shift blame or focus there. But kind of like with Damian Williams, he's kind of their third down back to me.
Mm-hmm.
I like Damian Williams. Like, it's one of the things where you can't really look at the numbers with Damian Williams. Like, he's a guy that, listen, he's also a very solid pass protector as well. I heard Ashley kind of talk about that as well. And I think that how essential it is for running backs now as the game is evolving and changing. Having a guy like Damian Williams is not only just great for third downs, maybe get that third and short, but he's also great in pass protection, which I think, for the Falcons, listen, that's a whole story, but that's a whole other segment in itself.
Right.
But the interesting matchup, the battle to me is going to be that this is going to be a 3 running back committee. It's going to be very interesting to see. Like, so you mentioned Tyler Algier, who we drafted in the 5th round out of BYU, and then you still got Quadri Ollison, who's still on the team. When he was drafted back from 2019, and then they signed Jeremy McNichols. I believe one of those 3 guys is going to obviously be the third down back. It's a matter of who. And if you had to ask me today which one, I would kind of slightly lean toward Algier, simply because maybe I want to say younger, but I just think that with Tyler Algier, I think he just, his vision, I just like how reliable he is. When you watch some of his film back at BYU, because one of the biggest things with the Atlanta Falcons is that so we have to run the football. It's a standard to talk about it, but I think just how, to me, outside of Cordero Patterson, the running game was just not there. And I think that's why you don't see Mike Davis there anymore, because when Mike Davis came, like I said, Mike Davis was the guy who I felt could just complement Cordero, could be that guy. And he was solid with Carolina. He was very solid. And so I think he was going to come over to Atlanta and kind of be that guy to complement Cordell Patterson. And then it just didn't pan out for whatever reason. It's just the running wasn't there. So now, with Terry Fontenot drafting Tyler Algier, that's kind of letting me know that I think this is the team who they want to be the third down back. But yet you still may kind of see him on special teams. I think Algier's impact's not going to be 2022. I think 2023 kind of may be the impact. So, but as far as the running game goes in general, like a healthy Cordell Patterson, I cannot overemphasize. He has to be healthy. I can't, players have to be healthy in general, but I cannot stress for this running game to do anything. If Cordell Patterson is out for any stretch of time, it's, Damian Williams, sure, but then is Algier really that guy to step up now?
I'm not sure Algier can, he had 150 rushing attempts his junior year, 276 his senior, and his receiving target 28 receptions on 39 targets in college. That's pretty good for a college running back. So
absolutely, yeah,
he could do it all. I mean, he could do the things that need to be done. And like you said about Mike Davis, I honestly thought at the beginning of last season that Mike Davis was going to be the premier back in that league. I didn't know. I don't think anybody saw the Cordell Patterson show coming along. So it was a big surprise to me. I actually traded Cordell Patterson away. Again, one of the guys I trade away, and he goes off to have career years. That's kind of what happens to me.
Don't worry, John. I'm a Falcons fan, and I did the same thing because I'm thinking, well, who has more insight than the fan? Silly me.
Right.
Like, okay, listen, I know Cordell's great, but I think I can ship him, get something. And then people in my league were just like, the commit. He signed off on it. He warned me. I'm like, you know what? Make the deal. And when I saw Cordell on the other team, I don't want to get into that story, but like to your point, nobody saw Cordell Patterson breaking out. But the fact is that he did, and now he is the feature back going into this season. It's just I was more hurt about Mike Davis because. Right. I just saw the potential. A lot of people were like, "Oh, we're not sure." Like, no, I saw some things in Carolina. Listen, we played them twice a year for God's sakes. So I saw some things. I'm like, okay, if he's coming to Atlanta, he could kind of be the guy to complement Cordell. To your point, could kind of maybe take. I would have been fine him being the RB1. I'd have been fine with that, but he just wasn't the guy. So now. When you're looking, listen, they drafted Algier for a reason. Like I say, Quadri Ellis has been on this team, entering his fourth season. Mm-hmm. And then you signed Jeremy McNichols, who played for Tennessee. I just believe that Algier kind of wins that third running back position because you don't draft as much. Ellison and McNichols, I've seen enough from Ellison, for Ellison to go, okay, I'm not saying we move on, but like we're kind of like at year, his best year was his first year. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, and then you kind of never knew existed on the roster.
Right.
So I'm just fine with Algier. Listen, if his impact is not this year, I'm pretty sure 2023 will be the impact. So that's the kind of way I look at the running back room for Atlanta. It's, Patterson, Williams, and I give the edge to Algier, barring injuries or anything of that nature. Those are the triumvirate I have entering, 2022 in the running back.
Yeah, we got better.
If I could just say something real quick about Tyler Algier, he's someone that I definitely have. Well, I respect the guy. He's got a lot of passion. I mean, he was a finalist for the Brandon Burlsworth Trophy, if you're familiar with that, which is the trophy given to the most outstanding athlete that began his career as a walk-on. And so we know what he's capable of doing in terms of wanting to, succeed and do well. So and he's a great receiving back too.
Yeah.
Which fits well in that system. If he can
Absolutely,
pick things up, I think there's a future for him.
Yeah.
As a possible, and nothing against Damian Williams, but if things go the right way, Algier could be that second running back.
Yeah, Damian Williams is a good talent. He's a really good talent. I mean, he was probably the MVP of the Super Bowl, but we're not going to talk about that.
But that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. But
well, he stayed fresh though because he stayed out because of COVID. So it's not like his body got used up a lot too. He was. I mean, if anything, maybe he's a little bit more healthy because he didn't play. But
it's possible.
But but to your point, I'm sorry, I mean to jump in and cut off here. I think to your points about Algier, I think there's a reason. When I look at Atlanta, to get value, I've always believed in getting great value in a draft. Obviously, every team does. Getting a guy like Algier, Fontenot, and Arthur Smith knows what he wants to do with this offense. When we talk about receivers, there's definitely a plan there as well. But as far as the running backs go, Algier kind of fits the bill. And the only reason why I kind of say maybe not 2022 is simply because, am I saying Damian Williams? At some point, Algier will kind of overtake Williams. We don't know because, listen, Williams may not be there next year. Who's to say? He's got a 1-year deal. So I just think to the point where, Algier is a guy where he showed flashes this year. And who's to say in 2023 he could be that number 2 guy, because he does catch the balls out in the flat. He's kind of like Cordell Patterson. If you look at Cordell Patterson, he did everything. That's the kind of Arthur Smith, given the situations going on with the offense. Cordell Patterson kind of blossomed because the whole Calvin Ridley situation, and everyone was quadruple covering Kyle Pitts. So it kind of made Cordell Patterson, a former receiver, that kind of made that kind of a little bit easier. He's used to catching passes out, in the open. He's catching their passes in the flat. So I think that's the reason why Cordell Patterson kind of played the way that he played last year and led the team in receiving yard, because that's the type of player he was as a receiver converted to running back, and kind of fit the bill. So, but as far as Algier goes, Algier has the potential maybe to be that second guy. Maybe, like I said, maybe not this year, but I think he's a guy to look out for in 2023.
Absolutely. A guy we are looking out for in 2023, though, or 2022 anyway, is Alvin Kamara. We're going to jump to the Saints here. I mean, they drafted Abram Smith this year, but Kamara is a one-man show for this team. He's shown he can do it. I mean, he's the epitome of a well-rounded running back. He's pretty much in the same category as Christian McCaffrey. So there's not much to say about the Saints as far as their running back situation, minus any kind of possible suspensions for doing knucklehead stuff at the Pro Bowl. But that's who knows what's going to happen with that. It could be just hyping whatever rumorville, whatever it is, what it is. But I'm not sure Abram Smith would be able to come in and do the same things Kamara could. I'm not sure there's not many people on the face of the earth that can do what Kamara does. So I mean, and after that, you got Tony Jones, Dwayne Washington. There's not much else on his depth chart besides Kamara, and he is the main guy, the show, the greatest show in New Orleans. So it is what it is.
They still have Mark Ingram too, don't they?
They do not have Mark Ingram. He's not.
No, I don't think he's on the team anymore.
He's not signed. Okay, for
No.
whatever reason, I thought they signed him again, but I could be wrong about that.
There was talks about it. I don't think it
Yeah.
ever happened, though. As far as I know, on my depth chart that I have,
I didn't see him.
He's not on any of my depth charts, and I can look it up for a minute, but I'll look it up while we're moving on to our wide receivers. So with the wide receiver situation, Jeff, why don't we start with the Carolina and my third favorite player in the NFL, DJ Moore. Please talk about him, and you can talk about him as long as you want to.
All right. So DJ Moore, wow, what's not really to like about him? He's an excellent receiver, despite the fact that he's had subpar quarterback play. Finishing in the top 20 each of the last 3 years in terms of fantasy numbers, despite not even ever exceeding 4 touchdowns in a season. So he is, I want to say he's a fringe elite receiver. And if he can figure out how to score more touchdowns, I mean, he's there. He is just there. And, he's had over 1,200 yards combined rushing and receiving in the last 3 years. No other receiver can say that. No other player can say that. No other wide receiver can say that. Sure, running backs can. I look at Carolina's wide receiver room, obviously starting with DJ Moore, who I just mentioned. He's developed into a good route runner. I've seen him run excellent routes where he's baiting the corner, and he fakes one way and goes the other, or waits to the corner, commits and bends his hip, and he goes the other way to get more separation. I mean, there are wide receivers that are excellent in the league who put up big numbers who can't do that. Right. And, DJ Moore is shown that he can, and he's done well, like I said, without really strong quarterback play. After Moore, you've got Robbie Anderson, who, of course, he knows Sam Darnold from his time with the Jets. And, I see Anderson as a typical type of, number 2 type of wide receiver, really nothing more, nothing less. He's really good. He's fast. He's good at getting open deep. But the reason why he kind of struggled recently is because he didn't have time to run routes. The offensive line just could not handle the pressure, and Darnold wasn't able to allow him to run his route. How many times do we see receivers struggle with the reception percentage understanding statistic when the offensive line is weak and the quarterback is weak as a result? We've seen that time and time again with other receivers as well. Going back in time, Chris Chambers was a perfect wide receiver for that. Remember Chris Chambers?
I sure do.
What a good receiver he was. But on the offenses that he played on, he never could finish his routes. Robbie Anderson is kind of that guy for me. He had 95 catches or something like that 2 years ago. Which I completely saw as a career year. That was when McCaffrey was also hurt, and he was used more. Curtis Samuel was on that team back then. That was when Carolina had 3 receivers in the top 30. Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback. I think there's room for improvement for Anderson compared to last year, but I mean, he's not moving mountains, and I don't really see him as someone who could be like I'm not even sure he's fantasy relevant at this point because the Panthers offense isn't necessarily that relevant.
They're not designed for that type of offense. They're not designed for that deep playability. Yeah.
Right. Not particularly. Exactly. Right. So, I mean, it remains to be seen what Ben McAdoo is going to do. But like you said, that's not really his cup of tea.
Right.
So that might be another reason why, he could at least struggle with big plays. And don't get me started about Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins, but I kind of think that's going to happen there too. But anyway, Terrace Marshall's the guy that I want to talk about because a lot of people were really high on him coming in, but he was young. He was 20 years old as a rookie,
Right.
and he recently turned he turned 21 going into his rookie season. Now he just turned 22. He's younger than I don't have the list, but I mean, there's like 5 or 6 rookie receivers this year. Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, Jamison Williams. He's younger than all those guys.
To be fair, those guys stayed in school for an extra year for COVID.
Right.
Just to be fair.
Right, exactly. I mean, he came out young. And, kind of just like Javonte Williams did, right?
Mhm.
So there's I want to say there's still some meat on the bone that we haven't seen with him. I think that he's going to be more involved in the offense. He's not going to be a fish out of water in terms of understanding the playbook this year. I think that's going to come a little bit easier to him, despite the fact that he's got a new offensive coordinator. But now he at least knows routes and route concepts and understanding what he needs to do, how to read defenses. He's got DJ Moore on his team as well, helping him. And anytime you have Christian McCaffrey in your lineup, your entire team is going to be better because everyone's going to be focusing on him, not just as a rusher, but as a receiver. So there's room for improvement for Terrace Marshall. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's time to put dirt on his coffin. I'm really curious to see what he can do, but at the same time, the offense has to improve as well. So there's that connection as well. So
my biggest problem with Marshall is that he kicks DJ Moore out to the outside, and DJ Moore should be a slot receiver. I hate that DJ Moore is not where he belongs, and it just kind of kills me that he's got to play in the outside when he belongs in the slot across the middle of the field.
Yeah, and DJ Moore when he initially started, and he kind of still does this, but not to the amount that he used to, is break tackles. I mean, sure, he was one of the best receivers as a rookie in terms of being able to break tackles and evade and just be elusive after the catch. And, to see him operate in the slot like that would be great. But like you said, we got to figure out what the offense is going to do, where they want him. Do they have someone who can play the slot? Do they have someone who can play outside as well, so he could go into the slot? I'm not sure if they necessarily have that, so that's why he's out there.
Right.
Hopefully that was a little bit of enough time for you to do your research on your end.
He's still on the team, as far as I could tell. Everywhere says he's on the team, but he doesn't show up in any depth charts. I don't know if they have him slated there, or he's unrestricted free agent or restricted, but half the depth charts have him. And I look on like Sleeper or a couple other places, and it says that he's in a backup role, but I don't see him anywhere. So it's unsure.
Feel free. Let's move on. I actually want to know more about Calvin Ridley and your thoughts on that, Ladarius, as well as, of course, Chris Godwin and the Bucs and how he's coming along.
Yeah, the Bucs are next up here. So tell me, I do want to know. I mean, I need some inside information because I love Chris Godwin and this offense. When I was sitting at the bar watching Chris Godwin catch like 11 catches for 107 yards and something, and then I looked like he fell, and I'm like, oh, he's okay, and then he didn't get up. I'm like, no. And he said it's possible knee injury, and then it came out as torn ACL. I was like, oh, this is terrible. And it couldn't have happened. Like, I just hope that with
and then Brown got hurt.
Yeah, and then
it really just shut him down.
The miracle of modern medicine. I hope that Chris Godwin's healthy. But Ashley, tell us about Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Russell Gage, big addition, Tyler Johnson. The rest of the depth chart, Jarrett Stearns, that kind of stuff. Tell me about all these players in the receiving core of the Buccaneers.
So I'll start out with your guy. I'll start out with Chris Godwin. So from what Todd Bowles has said and what players, Todd Bowles isn't saying anything. He's progressing the way he is. He's not there yet. There's no setback. We're kind of just waiting to see how it plays out. And then they had a wide receiver. I think it was Jalen Darden come out and say, like, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I think he'll be back before the timetable that they're giving him, because ACLs a couple years ago and ACLs now are kind of very different. Someone just signed with the Falcons and they were cleared from their ACL after 7 months. Just signed with the team, passed the physical and everything.
Look what Adrian Peterson did with his knee. That's ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah. So everyone's saying
Charles.
that Godwin's going to miss time. They're like, oh, he'll be out until at least November. I don't think so. I truly don't think so. I mean, being an EMT, we see a lot of emergency stuff, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, I know the knee better than everybody. But I think the way that Godwin is and having that off season to fully rest and get your body right and go to these doctors and try different forms of rehab and stuff like that, I think worst case scenario, he'll be out maybe the first 4 weeks. I think best case scenario, he's ready to go week 1. They really don't have to rush him back. But I think with him having surgery in January and the first week of the season not being until mid September, the second week of September, he has a good shot. And if he has to miss time, he misses some time. But everyone's like, oh, you don't want to draft him this year because he's gonna miss so much time. And what if he doesn't play at all? I just don't think it's the case. I think that he'll be ready to go. Like I said, maybe the end of October, if worst case scenario. He's healed very quickly with his hands when he had the pins in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
People were talking about him not being the same guy, but I mean, the way that Chris Godwin is wired, I mean, the guy's in warm-ups with these goggles. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He wears these goggles that like compare his vision, and it's like strobe lights. And it's for him to get better with like instinctively catching the ball. So you have a guy that's doing that. He played with pins in his hands and stitches and he can't even make a fist with his hand, and he's catching 12, 13 passes against the Washington team last year in 2020 in the playoffs. I mean, this is a guy who's not going to sit on the sideline and be like, well, I just don't know. The moment he starts feeling that strength come back to his knees and the cuts get easier and there's no pain, he's going to be back on the field.
Yep.
So I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to have another 1,000-yard season easily, if not 1,200 yards. He's the main, I don't want to say the main staple. I'll get into Mike Evans in a minute, but Chris Godwin makes that offense so much more dynamic. You can do so many things with him. Mike is a big body guy, and Godwin's only 6'2", like 210, 215. So he can get into that slot. He can get into those wide receiver screens. He can get into the end arounds. He can block pretty well. He's an all-around guy who is going to make you miss. He can break tackles. He can beat you with his speed. He's not like elite speed, but, you run a 440 or 442, you're gonna be able to break away from guys. So I think that Godwin will be fine. I think that he's gonna be right back to where he was. I think he's going to have a year that people don't see coming because of the injury, and I think they're gonna write him off. But I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people in that aspect. But that's just me, like I said.
Are we on month 6 or so of his rehab?
January, February, March, April, May, June. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I had to count on my fingers to get to 6, but yeah.
But I mean, I am a little concerned, for Godwin to be ready to go week 1. That's a concern of mine. Fantasy speaking, I am staying away from him in redraft. I don't, you look at other receivers who have had their ACLs and they've come back the previous year and they're fine, right? Like Jordy Nelson did it. Julian Edelman did it. But those all were either preseason or like really early, week 1, 2, 3, 4, not January surgery, right? So I got a little bit of pause in regards to him. I was kind of hoping that maybe there was some better news about Godwin, at least so far. But shoot, if he's on the PUP list early on, and then makes if he's on the PUP list after preseason, obviously then he's out. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of how things roll. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah,
there's just not a lot of news. It's very
Yeah.
it's been very hush hush.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles is very much the same like Bruce Arians is. He's gonna tell you what he wants to hear. What do you want to hear? He's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, he's doing fine. He's great. Ready, he can go right now." You know what I mean?
Right.
He's not gonna tell you the real thing. So as we get closer to training camp and preseason, we'll hear more. And once you hit that 7, 8, 9 month mark, you're gonna hear more of, oh, he's starting to run. Oh, he's catching passes. Oh, he's making cuts. I'm not saying automatically or immediately. Just you'll start hearing that and seeing where he's at, or oh, we're giving him more time, or oh, there was a setback, because you're in that gray area right now with the recovery where things can either get sped up or things can get pushed behind. So they're kind of in that gray area of just waiting and getting more scans at the 8, 9 month mark.
health wise, it's concerning, but transition wise, coming back and playing with Tom Brady, I think they were on 100% on the same page where he needs to be. So the football side transition will be flawless. Just getting to that point where he's clear for the doctors, going back on the football field. Obviously that's the biggest obstacle. But I think he'll be faster. A lot of players don't get to come back from an injury to Tom Brady throwing them the football. That's the difference here, I think. So
yeah, I agree.
they brought in Russell Gage. I think that's just an insurance package. I mean, Russell Gage is a really good receiver, but I don't know if that's the answer for he's going to be able to do Chris Godwin things. But he is pretty good, but he's not Chris Godwin. So, but Evans is kind of a boomer bust player. I mean, he has some really good games, and then he just gets lost some weeks. Tell me about him.
So, I just want to personally put this out because I love Mike. Like, Mike's one of someone that I don't only look up to as a team, as my favorite team, just a human being. Like, he's just one of the most genuinely amazing people you'll ever meet, you'll ever talk to, you'll ever have a chance to be around or just even watch him work with the kids. But here's the thing about Mike Evans, right? People love to say that he gets lost in games or he's just not around, but Mike Evans is that type of guy who's going to see the double teams. There's a reason why Godwin gets open so often outside of his ability to run routes and the concept of running, slot in and slot out or those out routes or those bubble screens and whatever and whatnot. He's 6'5", 235 pounds and runs a 4.50. There's not guys that size running that, and it's even faster in person. He's had 1,000-yard season since he's entered the league, right? He had a career year in touchdowns last year with, I think, 13 or 14. And this was while he was battering injuries with his leg and with his thigh and with his back because he was getting banged up so much because of not having Godwin and other guys. And he still had 1,000 yards and a career year in touchdowns. I think that even if Godwin misses time, that production is not going to slow down. If you think about it, Mike Evans had Josh McCown, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston before the weight loss and LASIK eye surgery, throwing him the football, and he's never had a down year.
1,000 yards every year for the last 8 years.
1,000 yards every year. And every offseason we have he misses games. The touchdowns. He's going to be double teamed. At some point, there has to be a discussion of maybe he's just that good. Maybe he's just a different breed where it doesn't matter what situation you put him in, he's gonna come through. And he doesn't have to be that guy that gets 8, 10, 12 catches or 8, 10, 12 targets a game. He can do it with 5, 6, 7, 8 targets. It doesn't have to be a mass production. He can beat you deep. He's great on the comeback. You can hit him on a slant. You can hit him on a fade route. He has that big body mentality with the same elusive speed. I don't want to say elusive, but it's sneaky speed where he can get behind you if you're not paying attention. He's gone against some of the bigger corners against Darius Slay in the playoffs. Perfect example. He ate Darius Slay up all game long in the playoffs. He went off against who did they play after that? Jalen Ramsey. Everyone's like, oh, Jalen Ramsey. Mike's not gonna have a game at all, especially with no Godwin. And he had over 100 yards and a touchdown. At some point, we have to give Mike Evans his respect. He's gonna do what he does. He's only getting better. I think he just turned 28 years old, and he's just now hitting his prime and his really just getting into where he's comfortable and trying out new things to make himself even better. He didn't have that before. Now he has Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, throwing him the football. And he's not having Jameis throw him overthrown balls. He's not having Josh McCown throw him a football. You know what I mean? So I think he is someone who's going to have another 1,000-yard season. He may even have another 10 touchdown season, especially if Godwin misses time. It doesn't matter if you double team him or not. He's going to get his, just like he did every other year. So
like clockwork, yep.
He's top.
Set it and forget it, especially best ball. Oh my God, he's a best ball king.
He is a best ball. Those are those boomer bust games, but when he booms, he sure booms, man. That's
yeah. Set it and forget it. That's Mike Evans.
Speaking of boom, Ladarius, tell me about the Drake London signing and Calvin Ridley and all and Brian Edwards, who I like, and Alameda Zacharias, those kind of deal. Tell me about the Falcons off receiving core.
I'll address the Calvin Ridley situation. Drake London, that pick doesn't happen if Calvin Ridley's playing in 2022. That's always been my stance, and I understand why Fontenot and Arthur Smith. Listen, I get it. Initially on, I was very upset. I won't go with the things that I said that draft night, but through time, I understand that. Listen, this wide receiver room needed a spark, and when Calvin Ridley was essentially done for the year, getting the best receiver, in my opinion, in the whole draft, I think was the right move, because I look at a guy like Drake London, look, 6'4", 219, he can be a slot guy, he can play on the outside. Like, the only real nitpick, and it's a very nuanced nitpick, is just his release. Like, but once again, he's that talented, he'll pick up and figure it out. So arguably, I think he walks in as the wide receiver 1. Now, wide receiver 2 becomes interesting because I really, really like Brian Edwards. I really, really do. When I saw we signed him, I'm like, we got value. Because in a room where we just need bodies, essentially, getting a guy like Brian Edwards, look, 6'5", 212 pounds. He had 3 touchdowns with the Raiders last year, which I believe was like, he was tied for second on the team in touchdown receptions, if I'm not mistaken, last year for the Raiders. I think he's a guy who could come into that offense where the passing game, I don't know, it may become a more of a balanced offense, but right now, he's a guy, obviously with his size, he can win a couple of jump balls. I think that was the Falcons' plans going into the offseason. Like, we got to get tall receivers. Because what else did they do? They went outside Auden Tate, too. Auden Tate is, 6'5", 228.
Another big dude, yeah.
And Auden Tate, I think he got lost in the shuffle in Cincinnati. Because when you have guys like some guy named Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd, it's very easy to get lost in that shuffle. So I think he could come in as a guy, compete for that wide receiver 2 spot. But, I want to kind of talk about the slot position, because you brought up Zacchaeus, who, once again, he's one of those guys where I need to see something. I just need to see something, because listen, they brought in Damiere Byrd to kind of compete with him for that slot position. And, from Chicago. I think when I look at the way this Falcons offense is constructed and the way it's built, I kind of am of the belief that Zacchaeus has to do something. Because at this stage in the game, there's no excuses, because you can just be how can I phrase this properly? There's room to grow, because I don't think there's as much pressure on Zacchaeus.
Right.
There's no pressure to be like, well, I have to be this number 2 guy. No, you don't have to do that. I think that's what was kind of the problem last year, where things happened with Ridley and kind of the passing game just kind of was absent. It kind of felt like, Matt Ryan was trying to get Zacchaeus in this offense. He was trying, but it just wasn't there. So Zacchaeus is a great talent. You kind of slide him down, put him in the slot. You kind of bring the competition with Damiere Byrd. You could have something there. But, when I look at the way this room is constructed, I have even talked about, Frank Darby and Geronimo Allison. Like, there's solid wide receivers in that wide receiver room. Obviously, that starts with Drake London. I think Brian Edwards, I give the edge to him to be the number 2 guy. And Auden Tate, I kind of put up, maybe it's the 3 best receivers the Falcons have this season.
Mm-hmm. I like Auden Tate. What is the story with Ridley? Is there any end to his suspension, or are they going to find more stuff out about his gambling stuff, or what's going on in Atlanta? What do you hear about that kind of stuff?
At this stage in the game, he can't apply for reinstatement until essentially next year.
Oof.
So I don't, because me personally, I'll just slide my 2 cents in. I understand the league trying to make a statement. I get that. You want to be but to give him the whole year.
I mean, Pete Rose is
just
banned
don't.
for life for gambling, and he wasn't even playing when he was gambling. He was a coach. So I mean, the NFL does not take this kind of stuff like lightly, and sports in
Yeah,
general. If it
yeah,
gets leaked out that guys are gambling on a team, that's a
yeah,
big problem.
yeah. And I'm not saying what he did was right at all,
Mhm.
but I can guarantee you, if you dig further, Ridley's not the only guy.
No, 100%.
Ridley's just the guy. It's kind of like when you were in school and everybody was acting up, and like especially if there was a substitute teacher, like not even the original teacher. If your substitute teacher was there, they're not going to get the original person who like, okay, who threw it. They're not going to get the first person who threw it. It's going to be the second or third person who threw it, and then
Yeah.
everybody else suffers as a consequence. That's what I kind of feel happened with Calvin Ridley. I understand you want to make a statement, and to your point, that's why Pete Rose is banned for life in baseball. But I also say this: I always like, Ridley's just the guy who got caught. Other players in the league do it, and I understand you want to make that statement. So essentially, and this goes right back to the Falcons. It literally changed what the Falcons were going to do draft wise because I really felt that if you had a Calvin Ridley, they would have probably addressed the defense.
Right.
In the first round of the draft, they probably would have saw a guy like Kyle Hamilton was falling. They were going to get a guy, maybe a Jermaine Johnson out of FSU. They were going to probably go defense, but when arguably your number one receiver going into 2022 ain't going to be there for 2022, you got to draft the best receiver on the board, which is Drake London. Now, I'm very optimistic about what Drake London can do. But the bigger question is what's behind Drake London. If
Right.
Ryan Edwards, can he be that number two? Auden Tate's a guy that I say to be on the lookout for. Because like I say, he just got lost in the shuffle in a very good Cincinnati wide receiver room, where when you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, it's very easy to get lost in that shuffle.
It sure is.
It's very easy. So Auden Tate, wanted to go somewhere where he felt he could be a starter. And you see it all the time, especially receivers like, well, I can be a number one or number two guy. Well, Auden Tate has that chance this year to potentially end the year as a number two receiver. And maybe to compete with Brian Edwards for that number two position. So I think Calvin Ridley's absence changed the dynamic of this wide receiver room, obviously. Obviously, the fantasy dynamic, obviously. So now
it doesn't help that much when you got Marcus Mariota throwing the football either. When you got a situation like
exactly, it kind of makes where there was value, but then once again, like when you have a Marcus Mariota, who, like I alluded to earlier, I don't think he's terrible. I think he's there. He fits what Arthur. It's about familiarity. I think the thing I'm learning with Arthur Smith is that he wants to surround him with guys who he's just familiar with, and like I said, he knows Mariota well enough to know, okay, well, this is what is expected. I don't expect Mariota to be like Tom Brady and throw for 5,316 yards. I'm not expecting that. If that happens, then I'm going to go to Atlanta myself because I got to see it for myself. So I just kind of feel like this wide receiver, there's optimism. I think Drake London, has kind of lifted up that room because it was very dark in that wide receiver because we didn't know what the plan was. Drafting Drake London became the plan. It's just what's going to happen after that, because we know how he is. We know he's the number one guy, but the question is going to be going into the season, and it's going to figure itself out. Is it Brian Edwards? Is it Auden Tate? Could a guy like what are we going to get out of Zacchaeus? I think a lot of fans are asking that question. I know I've been asking that question the last 2 years. What the world are we going to get out of Zacchaeus? So I'm just very optimistic about this wide receiver room going into 2022.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good receivers in this whole division. I'm going to jump to the Saints right now with, Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. If he comes back, gets like I said before, I think the biggest pain in his body right now is his wallet. I think he's waiting for a contract extension or some kind of money to lock him up. They brought in Landry, which is not, I mean, it's not a good sign for the Thomas situation. But I like Marquez Callaway. If Thomas doesn't show up this year, I think Callaway could be a nice addition to this. A nice fill in anyway to what Thomas could have been. But nobody's Michael Thomas. Nobody can do the things Michael Thomas does. He's a slant boy. You call him whatever you want to. But I mean, he broke the NFL record for reception. So this is a really good offensive system, also offensive wide receiving core anyway, for Jameis to work with. I just hope that Thomas comes back and is able to solidify this entire core here. Anybody else got anything to say about the Saints before we move on?
I like the fact that they got Jarvis Landry.
Yes,
I think that's the fact that he's kind of coming home in that regard.
Yes.
Just like Tyrann Mathieu as well. LSU returning back to New Orleans. So yeah, I think that Landry is going to have a fairly big role. I see them with Thomas, Landry, Olave between the three. Not necessarily, I don't know if Olave is going to break 750 or 800 yards receiving like some people think he might. He might be it might take him a little bit of time to get going, but he definitely has talent. And if not midseason, definitely next year. But I think this is more of Thomas and Landry in 2022. I don't really see a whole lot from Olave this year. Yeah. At least I can be swayed differently, but that's kind of how I'm leaning at this particular time.
Yeah. I think to your point, I think my cap on Olave. I think 750 is a solid season and it's not a knock on Olave. Mm-hmm. I think, like to your point, I think you draft him for this year, but essentially you expect bigger, better things in 2023. This is all about bringing Jarvis Landry. It's all about Michael Thomas. If those two can click, if those two can figure it out, and you got Jameis Winston, and look, Jameis Winston for all, I like the way he plays, and I hope I don't want no Saints fans saying that. Oh, I like Jameis. Like, no, let's not get that far. But what I will say is that the way that he plays, I think if he has this Saints offense has the potential to be something very, 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 very good. If those two, I'm not, like I said, not expecting a whole lot out of Olave. Not saying he's not going to be a talent down the road, but give me Landry, Thomas, and you give me that and Jameis Winston. And listen, that LASIK doing wonders. Listen, that Saints passing game could be something, and I'd be very interested to see what that passing game would look like without Sean Payton. More important,
yeah,
Chris Olave is what Jameis Winston loves. This guy's 6'1", 185, runs a 4.39 40, and he's good. I mean, he had 32% college dominator or something crazy like that. I mean, he's an exceptional player. So if the middle of the field is if the safeties and everybody has to stay close because they operate mainly in the middle of the field, and Olave can burn down the outside, which Jameis loves hitting his guys downfield. Olave could be something special. I think even somewhere towards the middle of the end of this year, I think you'd see Olave really kind of break out in this offense. So I'm glad he landed there. I'm glad the Saints picked him, and I'm glad they have Jameis Winston to throw to him. It's a very good receiving core. I don't know why this. I've seen the Saints. People have the Saints winning like 4 or 5 games this year. I'm like, come on, man. This is with Kamara and this offense, and Troutman's pocket. We'll talk about tight ends next, but this is a very well stacked team, and their defense is usually pretty well too. So I don't get the Saints hate, but
it's probably part the fact that you're not sure about the coach.
Yeah.
You're not maybe sure about Kamara's possible suspension. I think there's some factors at play there. I think they're going to win 7, 8, 9 games. I'm not sure if they're a 10-win team, but that's kind of where I'm at there. You can say that about a lot of teams, though. Shoot, 7, 8, 9 wins.
Yeah.
I hope they're just not paper champions, and it looks good on paper, but it's I don't want these guys to look like Tarzan and play like Jane, that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens. But we got to move on to the tight ends here. We'll start with Ashley with the Buccaneers, and no Gronk yet. I think he's enjoying the offseason, but I think he'll be back. But they drafted Cade Otton, which I don't think is not a Gronk replacement, but he's a good player. Cameron Brate, it is what it is. But it's not Gronkowski. What are they going to do with tight end here? You're on mute, I think, Ashley. Oh,
Is she there? Did we lose? There she is.
She got off the stream. Ashley, you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My
That's all right.
it just kind of spazzed out on me there. But from what we've been fed from the media writers, the beat writers, the head coach, the front office, people I know personally, Gronk's coming back. It's not a matter of if, but more when.
He wants to skirt training camp.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
blame him. It's
Every year.
115 degrees in Florida. It's hot. It's hot.
He knows he's coming. He's coming.
Listen,
he's just not going to be around for training camp, and he's probably doing whatever he can to not say that, but do that.
Yeah, so let's just say, right, for some reason Gronk doesn't come back, right? I'm not mad at Cameron Brate. Like, I'm not mad at him being our number one tight end. It was kind of that way with that when O.J. Howard was here. And you think about it, O.J. Howard is 6'6", 250 pounds, runs a 4.50. Athletically, build-wise, and testing-wise at the combine, he has the exact same measurements, speed, everything as George Kittle. I kid you not. He has all the intangibles, all the speed, all the size, all the testing, everything exactly as George Kittle is. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have a George Kittle clone in our offense."
Yeah.
And he couldn't do anything. Can't catch a ball, can't learn the offense, can't run the routes. But you know who can? Cam Brate. Cam Brate was Jameis's cushion for a lot of the time that Jameis was in Tampa. Cam Brate can be in the back of the end zone and catch 6, 7, 8 touchdowns a season. He doesn't have to be the guy that gets the ball, gets you up and down the field. He's just kind of there when you need him. And if he's forced to be in a number one role while he's, K. Dotton and Keith, get their legs wet in the NFL, that's fine. I'm not 100% mad at that. He's a decent blocker. He's not gonna burn you, but he has decent hands and he knows his assignment. He knows where to be, especially with someone like Tom Brady throwing him the football. It's pretty hard to mess up when you have the greatest quarterback of all time throwing you the football. So if it's no Gronk, I'm okay with Cam Brate. Obviously, it's not gonna be like, you're going from arguably the best tight end to ever play the game. Obviously, there's more, there's a couple guys you can argue, but, the number one guy going to someone who's like probably in the 20s. Cam Brate's kind of just there. He's just there to have fun and catch footballs. But I'm really excited to see what the younger guys bring to the table. Otten was one of my guys to take in day 3 of the draft, and I was pretty excited what his upside could be. Keith is another guy who's, known to get down and dirty and throw some blocks when you need him, and that's something that the Bucs are heavily focused on this offseason. With the trade for Shaq Mason on the offensive line, they want guys that'll block and hold blocks, and they can start running the ball more effectively. So it's going to be a different look if Gronk doesn't come back. It won't be I don't want to say as heavily tight end based in the passing game. It may be more focused run wise. You may not see a lot of double tight end sets or even tight end heavy sets. They may run more 5 wide in that instance. You have, let's just say Godwin, Evans, Perriman, Scotty Miller, and Russell Gage. Like, you may see more of that. It's going to be interesting, but if Gronk comes back, it's good news for the Bucs and Tom Brady. Gronk's not the same Gronk he was 5-6 years ago, but he can still beat you for 100 yards a game if you let him. He still has it in him to get down the field. If it's not as graceful as it used to be, he can still burn you. He can still gas your defense. So it'll be like you said. He's probably skipping out training camp and signing after that, but it's just more of a wait and see game as far as the tight end room at this point.
Ladarius, I got you scheduled next. This is kind of a. I should have let you. I'm going to let you go last because it's not even fair.
Yeah,
we're gonna head over to the Panthers next and talk about Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas. That's that kind of stuff. Tell me about. I love Tommy Tremble. I loved him out of Notre Dame. I loved that. He's the best. I mean, he is the definition of a blocking tight end of a a blocker, of a road grader. I mean, he should be an offensive lineman. He's such a good blocker. But as a fantasy player, I mean, he's just not putting up numbers on the field that makes you drool over, what a fantasy tight end is. In the NFL, as a player, he's what every team wants as a tight end. But it's tell me about Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas.
Sure. So maybe I can spend about 45 seconds to a minute on the Panthers tight end situation because it's not that great. But Tommy Tremble is someone who the Panthers must have thought pretty highly of to get rid and trade Dan Arnold earlier on in the year last year, where they picked up C.J. Henderson, the cornerback from Jacksonville. And trading him, obviously Tremble moves in. As a rookie, they do this. So the Panthers had one game where tight ends had more than 3 catches in a game last year, and that was one game, and there was 4 catches, and that was Ian Thomas who did it, by the way. And they scored 1 touchdown on the season for all their tight ends, and that was Tremble. So there's some hope there. You mentioned a lot of things. He's kind of the Swiss Army knife of the offense. He can do a lot. He can run the ball if needed, but he's a blocker first, I think, and he loves to block. He loves to make plays. Kind of has that George Kittle-ish interest in blocking first, right, before catching. So there's a possibility for him to develop into a tight end that stays on the field often, a lot, because of the fact that he can block and also make plays as a receiver. But, we haven't seen that yet. Now, Ben McAdoo's offense, he did fairly well with the Giants in that regard from looking at the tight end position. So it's possible that they move on, right? But, I mean, this is a Panthers team who had the previous year, I think they had 27 receptions to tight ends. And this past year, they had 45, I believe. So not many. That's the entire team. So,
yeah.
There's a lot of 11 personnel. And McCaffrey is also almost you think of him as a receiver as well. Plus they have their receiving core of Moore, Anderson, and now Terrace Marshall. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. Not maybe necessarily so much 2 tight end sets and 12 personnel, but I do think that the future in terms of what they want will include Tremble. He's not really a fantasy guy, at least not yet. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, but he has some DNA in him that makes him an interesting prospect because he can do a lot of different things. As I said before, has that tendency to that tenacity on as like you mentioned, a road grader, that George Kittle has. I see that, but we haven't seen him do the receiving end of that yet. If he does that this year, I think that would be a huge surprise. But there is some fingerprints there that you can at least be somewhat a little bit excited about. And, that's kind of all I'll say. And we'll move on to Kyle Pitts.
Well, let's just talk about Adam Troutman real fast and
sure.
Johnson.
That's right.
Get them out of the way real fast. I like Troutman. Him getting hurt last year was kind of a stick in the spokes of production for what his career should have started off or become anyway to where he's at right now. But I still like Troutman. And I think with this offense, we talked about before about Michael Thomas possibly not being there on time, but Troutman is a very good tight end. I think he's underrated in reality. I think he's going to have a very big year this year. So I'm trying to get him everywhere I possibly can. But
sounds like you really like the Saints.
You know what? I do. On paper, they're just such a beautiful team. How do you not like Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry? And I love Chris Olave. He's one of the he's one of the top 3 receivers, one of the top 4 receivers coming up this year, if not one of the best.
Yeah, Olave actually reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin. Not just the fact that he's Ohio State. Yes, I get it, right? But he also has that smarts, that level of intellect that I know what to do on the field as a rookie that other receivers on the team aren't even aware of. He has that ability. Stayed an extra year in school for a reason, right? He wanted to learn, get better, and develop. I get that. I just, I kind of see him almost maybe like you remember when Keenan Allen came in as a rookie? First couple weeks, he was like, okay. AJ Brown, same way. And then he kind of opened up and really got strong, like week 10, week 11, week 12. and kind of came on from there. I kind of see that as Olave this year. Anyway, here we go. We already talked about him. Here I am rambling again.
Yeah, I know. It's easy to ramble about him, though. I just feel like Ohio State now is remember what Pittsburgh was back in the day when Fitzgerald and all them guys kept coming out every year. There's a new awesome receiver coming out of Pitt, and now it just seems like Ohio State had grabbed the torch on these awesome receivers. So it is what it is.
He and Thomas.
Yes,
sure
right.
They have some good things to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, go ahead and give me the Kyle Pitts talk. This should be short and sweet and make everybody blush and feel bad about their team's tight ends, minus Gronkowski, who's good. But tell me about Kyle Pitts, Ladarius.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. No. all I'm going to say is this. I named all of my fantasy teams. Kyle is not the Pitts. I've watched him since he was at the University of Florida. The minute his name was called, neighbors, maybe said some things. I just love Kyle Pitts, as all of us fans do. The only thing is that throughout his great year, he only had just one touchdown reception.
I thought he had none.
He had one.
Yeah, he had one.
He caught it in another country.
Oh, yeah.
He had another one, but it was called back, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He had one, but it was over in Europe. So he didn't even catch one in America last year.
That's what you heard, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Falcon season in a nutshell, 2021. But all I want to simply say is that I look at Kyle Pitts. I've always said this, and I'll continually say that he's a tight end by name. But listen, 6'6", 246. The guy can play. He can play receiver, and I'm not saying Arthur Smith may put him in some receiver-esque, plays this year. I don't. But what I will say is that Kyle Pitts is just how dynamic. It's just the dynamic, and the fact that I remember that fans were actually legitimately upset that we drafted Kyle Pitts and not a quarterback. And I had to remind people, sometimes you have to get not necessarily maybe the best quarterback on the board, but get the best player on the board, which are two separate conversations.
Right.
And with Kyle Pitts, when he came out, I felt he was the best player in the draft. Maybe there's bias involved, but I felt he was. And when I saw him land where he did, you run to that phone. You don't think twice about it. You don't hesitate. You draft him. And when we drafted him, it paid dividends. But once again, I think you'll definitely see more than one touchdown because Arthur Smith, before he became offensive coordinator, he was the tight ends coach. So I think he's definitely going to make sure that Kyle Pitts sees the end zone more in 2022. And it is something before I finish, instead of talking about Pitts, listen, they went on to sign Anthony Firsker from Tennessee, kind of like as his, maybe as the backup. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, Arthur Smith getting him guys who he's very familiar with this time in Tennessee. So, out with Kyle Pitts, obviously, you kind of expect him I still think he's going to be a very, very high end fantasy tight end wise. Even though the passing game, I'm hoping for the best there. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
But I think the signing of Firsker, I think is a very solid signing. Once again, familiarity with Arthur Smith. I think Firsker, you may see him, definitely on blocking plays, things of that nature. But Firsker can also, he can catch a ball or two as well. So I'm very, very confident. The only thing I'm probably very confident about is our tight end room going into 2022.
One thing I want to mention about Kyle Pitts is this, and J.C. Horn, who's the cornerback of the Panthers, who went to South Carolina, was in the SEC, had really good things to say about Kyle Pitts, saying that he was arguably the toughest receiver that he ever covered in college. And think about who this includes. This includes Justin Jefferson. This includes Jamar Chase. This includes A.J. Brown. This includes Elijah Moore. All of those guys. And he says Kyle Pitts was one of the hardest receivers that he's ever covered. To me, that says an awful lot, and I know that he's looking forward to matching up against Pitts again. But for him to say that, I think that's really cool. But it also just says a lot about Kyle Pitts and kind of where he fits in the pantheon of NFL stardom in terms of ability and talent. And if the Falcons can figure out a quarterback, whether that's this year, next year, 2 years, whatever. I mean, the window's getting a little bit, it's wide open for Pitts. Yeah. But I mean, if they don't figure it out in a couple of years, then there's going to be like, well, then now what, right? We got to do something. And the opportunity is definitely there, but he needs that quarterback.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, like you're 1,000% right. That's one of the things that concerned me when we moved Matt Ryan, because this is the point I was trying to get people to see. Some Falcons fans that look, I understand Matt Ryan's age, I get it, but Matt Ryan, over the years, when you've seen what he's done with great talent, like when we had peak, like he was great before he had Julio Jones. That's how good Matt Ryan was. And then Roddy White, exactly. So you give him a guy like Julio, and then you fast forward, and then you give him a guy like you had Ridley, not enough tape on that, but for what I saw, him and Kyle Pitts. And this is the point I try to stress to people. Like, I understand we got to move on from Matt Ryan. I get it. People, it's a big fiscal issue, and I understand. But we're still eating the money, so I don't want to get into that. But the point is, and to your point, this is why I say for 2022, getting Desmond Ridder in the third round, they have to see what he's worth. Because if they don't think he could be the guy, if they need
to fail fast if they're going to fail.
Right, if they're going to fail, because like Arthur Smith may not want to talk about 2023, but look, we got to talk about 2023 in that quarterback class.
Mm-hmm.
And you better have a top 5, top 10 pick. You be pushing it to get a quarterback, because you got to see what you get out of Ridder. If you don't like what you see out of Ridder, listen, just a third round, just not, I don't want to say not heavily invested. But Pitts needs a quarterback, to your point, because, I just don't want to see a scenario where Kyle Pitts is just having, he's having solid year after year, but he can't have sustain that type of year because he just doesn't have sustainability at the quarterback position. And that's what concerns me as a fan, and that's why we might see Ridder sooner rather than later, as much as I like Mariota, because you got to see what Ridder does, because Arthur Smith's not going to tell you. Terry Fondo's not going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. They got to see what they want, because 2023 you can get your quarterback.
Right. Good points, man. Good points. I got it real fast. I got a trade offer right now, and I want to see if you guys just all four of us right now. I only have Javonte Williams. I just traded for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I got a couple other players like a couple other running backs, but I'm kind of handcuffed at running back position. Somebody just sent me, it's a tight end, it's a super flex dynasty, 12 teams, no kickers, no defense, 12 teams, 30 players, 10 starters, and it's quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and then 2 flex players, and a super flex, obviously. But
how many? You said 10 team?
It's 12 team.
12 team.
Okay.
12
and
team.
It's a tight end premium.
It's a 0.75 tight end premium, yeah. So it's a big tight end premium.
Okay.
And for some reason I've been held on to the coattails of the Evan Ingram thing for forever. So I don't know I think he's gonna have a good year this year in Jacksonville, but it's Evan Ingram and a 301 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, it sounds like crazy, but when you think about it, I'm not sure what's gonna happen to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I'm gonna say a huge no. Because I've been burned by Evan Ingram every year.
So have I know.
And I don't think
I'm on the Clyde Edwards-Helaire side.
Yeah. I don't
Me too.
He might score 5 touchdowns receiving.
He might not do anything again, though.
It's possible. But even if he doesn't do anything, it's still something. He's not going to do nothing.
It's still a safer bet than Evan Ingram is. He's not going to do nothing without the upside.
All right. I know this is kind of close for me. I think if there was he did put Devonta Foreman Deonta Foreman in this trade too, which I need running backs, but Deonta Foreman is not going to fill the Clyde Edwards-Helaire void on my roster. So
Yeah.
if there was something else thrown in here, like it's I would probably press the accept here, but this is just a little bit. It's such a teaser for me, and this guy knows that I love Evan Ingram and in the 301. So it's actually Nick Script that just sent it to me, and he's a jag off because he knows this. So, but that's listen, you guys.
I'd rather have Edwards-Helaire.
I think so too.
Is
even
he
though
you're running back three or four in that league?
I have Javonte. I got here. I'll tell you my team real fast. I got Michael Carter. I know that I got Javonte Williams, Kenneth Gainwell, Michael Carter, and pretty much that's about as far as I got Myles Gaskin, Keyshawn Vaughn, DJ Dallas, Benjamin, Daria Gubawale, Kenny Ngangwe, who I like, and Ngangu, and that's about it as far as running backs are concerned. So,
well, if you lose Edwards-Helaire and only get Foreman back, that's not a very good running back room.
No, Foreman would probably be a camp like a roster cut anyway. I
would hold on to Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, it's more power to the punch per position anyway. And on top of that, I already have Gesicki and Hawkinson as my tight ends. But in a flex, I could start Hawkinson, Gesicki, and Evan Ingram if he panned out. And but it is what it is. I think Helaire is probably the safer bet. It's tempting for me. I mean, it's probably might not be as tempting as you guys who don't like Ingram, but it's almost like you're right there, but he's not going to give me anything else. So I'm
the running backs that I kind of would like to target, either that I have targeted or like to, Ramondre Stevenson.
I know.
Elijah Mitchell, because people still are on the fence with Mitchell. I think he's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the fastest running back on the team, and we already know Kyle Shanahan loves speed. I think that's the reason why he was chosen ahead of Sermon. What's his first name?
Trey Sermon.
Trey, thank you. Trey Sermon. So yeah, I think Mitchell's the guy in San Francisco. He'd be a guy that I would target. That I think you can still get at a decent price. And Stevenson, I think people aren't really aware of exactly what New England's going to do. No offensive coordinator actually. Except Belichick, which is like the first time in how many years that the NFL's not had an offensive coordinator. But
right.
I really like Stevenson this year. Him and Harris, I think, could be like one of those thunder and lightning, dual approach types of offenses. But
I was in a conversation with Sigmund Bloom, and I'm like, well, what happens if Harris goes down and it's the Ramondre Stevens show? And he goes, but it won't be, because it never has been, and it never will be. They don't play that way.
They don't. There's always going to be someone, whether it's J.J. Taylor or it's one of the rookies that they drafted,
right?
Pierce,
or
even Harris. It's
right.
or James White. They have like 6 running backs.
I can't believe they re-signed James White. That was the biggest. I don't know what.
I think it was to honor him somewhat in some way.
Yeah,
well,
like a respect kind of.
Yeah, out of respect. I mean, lost his parents. Shoot, he got hurt. There's a lot that happened with James White. I think that was more of tip the hat. Here you go. Could they potentially hold on to him this year? Yeah, absolutely. But and if he's going to do anything, I think it'll be early, because they'll give him the ball and they'll say, "All right, James, do what you got to do," or welcome back to the league. You're back. Let's see what you can do, kind of things. I see the Patriots rolling that way.
And then it'll be
and then it's a committee.
You don't got to go home now. You got to go home now, but you can't stay here, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Hey, enjoy that first 3 weeks, but we're gonna move on.
All right. So you guys, this has been a blast. It's these shows are just. I love doing these shows. It's fun talking to awesome people. Let's start across the Ladarius. Introduce yourself, just kind of so where everybody can follow you again, where everybody can find you again, that kind of stuff.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter and on TikTok at Ladarius_Brown, Instagram at Ladarius_Brown. You can check out my work on Fansided for the Blogging Dirty, where I write about the Atlanta Falcons. Also on Sportskeeda, where I'm the NFL analyst for the NFC. And you put out videos every Wednesday, little trivia questions, and just little, thought-provoking videos throughout the from time to time when I share my opinions in video form.
Thank you very much. Ashley, one more time.
So you can follow me on Twitter. It's EMT_Ashley, ASHLIE. I'm actually not part of any kind of organization right now, so I'm a free agent. So come get me. As far as that goes, but yeah, that's really it. That and Twitch. If you want to come support the St. Jude's Children's fundraiser that I'm doing over the next month. But yeah, just those two.
I am 100% a free agent myself. I don't have anybody to go to. I love doing this. Is just what I do for fun because I've been playing this game since 1995. It's something I've done with my friends since I can remember drafting in the basement with writing the names up there and having to call my commissioner on the phone at 12 o'clock or at that point in time. I just real quick for you guys, I had to literally call, and there was no such thing as call waiting even back then. So it was just a busy signal. So I had if you and everybody had to have your lineup in at 12 o'clock on Sunday morning, and there was no Thursday night game. It was Sunday morning at noon. You had to have it in by. If you did not call it in by noon, that was it. You got a 0 for the week for every one of your players. It's not like who you had last week or you accidentally left your roster, and you got a 0. And then if your guy got hurt in the 3 o'clock game, oh, that's great. He's out. If the Monday night game, if you had a guy, if you knew Sunday somebody was like arrested or dead or whatever the deal was, you got a 0. It is what it is. That's kind of how it worked. Or else you had to get your car and drive to your commissioner's house with a piece of paper with all the names on there by 12 o'clock and put it in his hand, or else you got a 0 for the week if you couldn't get through, because everybody's trying to call a lineup in 10 minutes to 12. You get back from church, you run home, you call, what's the lineup, look at it and see who's hurt or what's going on. And then you pick up the phone, dial the number, and you're like, come on, you're hanging up trying to get the calls across. But it was a funner game. It was still a fun game back in the day, but I've been playing this my whole life. I don't even want to make any money on this thing. I just really enjoy talking to people like you every week or whenever I get a chance to about fantasy football. I'm 100% a free agent. I wouldn't mind going somewhere, but if I did this for the next 20 years and just talk to awesome people like you guys, I'd be happy. So, Jeff, tell me about you.
Yeah, no, that's fun, man. You talked about the golden age of fantasy. I mean, you're mentioning like Scotty Mitchell to Jermaine Crowell.
Yes.
Going back. You can find me at footballguys.com. I am a writer for them. I have a lot of work that I do there, collaborative work, as well as articles that I write during the season. And I didn't mention this in the intro, but I also have my own podcast that I do called Carolina Fandom, which is all about the fans of Carolina sports, mostly the Panthers, the Charlotte Hornets, as well as Charlotte FC, their new MLS team. So we talk about everything fandom in terms of Carolina sports. So that's me. Thanks for having me on here, John. Appreciate it. It was fun meeting you guys and talking some NFC South.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yes.
So
Thank
much
you very
fun.
much. I appreciate you guys coming on. I know you got better things to do with your families and stuff like that, and it ended up being a little longer than we thought. But this is my favorite hobby. I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't do that stuff. I do fantasy football, and to meet new people every week and talk to everybody and learn stuff about fantasy football from people like you who are smarter than me. I mean, this is that's what it's all about. So, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.